Was Sufism always accepted by Muslim scholars? Or was it once viewed with suspicion and even accused of innovation? In this video, we'll explore how Imam al-Ghazali became the bridge between Islamic law and spirituality, helping to integrate Sufism into mainstream Islam.
So, Imam Ghazali's understanding of Sufism. What was his understanding about Sufism? In integration Sufism within mainstream Islam. So because there was a there was a perception back in those days, that the credible and authentic Islam is the Islam which is mentioned in Kitab and Sunnah, which is manifested in Sharia, the Islamic law. Everything is explicitly mentioned. So anything beyond Islamic Sharia, like the Sufi practices, so people, even scholars, they think of it as innovation. It is seen suspicious. It is seen with doubts and reservations. So people, initially they hesitated to accept the Sufism, especially the Sharia scholars. The Sharia scholars like fuqaha and the jurists and muhaddiseen, the people, the scholars of hadith. They initially they found some doubts, they felt some suspicions about this Sufism, and they never tried it, they never practiced it. That's why they were against it. But here comes a figure known as Ghazali, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. He was an expert Sharia scholar. He was theologian, Aqidah scholar. He was the jurist. He was a faqih. He knows the Islamic law, and he was the Sufi as well. So he served as a bridge. He served as a bridge between the Sharia experts and the mystic experts. So here his role is vital and important to study. So what reforms he brought in the mysticism, and what interpretations and understandings he presented to the Sharia scholars. So there the interpretation of Kitab and Sunnah, it also required from coming from an expert. So Ghazali, being Sharia expert, knowing Islamic law, he brought some interpretations, unique interpretations of the Kitab and Sunnah, so that he convinced the Sharia people, the people who were have the apparent knowledge, so he convinced them that it can be understood in this way. These verses can be interpreted this way. So these interpretations gives legitimacy to the Sufism. So this is how he grabbed their attention. And also his work is not restricted to the Islamic law and Sharia experts. He also brought some reforms in the Sufi practices, and he figured out that there are some practices that has no legitimacy, and these are excess, these are ifrat and tafrit, and even these practices, they are innovations, and they have nothing to do with Islam, with the core of Islam. So get out of it. So he also suggested the mystic people and to abandon, to give up some practices, and also he persuaded, he convinced the Sharia scholars and to understand the mystic approach at least. So here he was the bridge. That's why he was the main figure. He was in 5th century after Hijrah, 400 and something he was there. That was his time period. And it's in CE calculations, his era was I think the 1058 CE after Christ to 1111. So it is equal to the 4th century after Hijrah. Very early scholar. Ghazali is not a later scholar. He was one of those who was our predecessors. He was in Iraq, right? Iraq, Basra. And there was a well-known institution known as Nizamiyyah. This Medina University here in Middle East. And the Jami'atul Azhar University in Egypt. So Azhar University, it is very well-known institution, and people they feel pride to be affiliated to Azhar, So back in those days, the Madrasa an-Nizamiyyah in Baghdad, in Iraq, that was just like the Cambridge, you can say, the King's College, for example, so very popular and across, because that was the Muslim time period, Muslim era. So Muslims were ruling, so their scholarships, their degrees, they were they does matter, and all the people, they go to Baghdad and they learn the studies there. So that was his era, and his name was Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahimahullah. So Abu Hamid Ghazali, he is known as proof of Islam, in Hujjatul Islam, Hujjah. So he was the Hujjatul Islam, mean evidence. So his statement is an evidence in religious matter. So that is his status. And he is also known as in his success in bridging the gap between the orthodox Islamic law, mean Sharia, and the spiritual mysticism. So how he, made a bridge between two: orthodox Islamic law, Sharia, which is a rule, which is, which comprises on the text from Kitab and Sunnah and the, only the text, nusus. But he integrated that with the spirituality, sincerity presented by the mystic people. So before Imam Ghazali, many scholars, they think of Sufism, with suspicion. They viewed Sufism with suspicion, fearing, having reservations. It was an innovation. It was bid'ah. Because the Sufi practices, they have specific forms of Dhikr, remembrance. Yeah, just close your eyes, and do this and that. And also the Muraqabah practices. Muraqabah, you are, meditation, you are meditating. So this meditation, practices, they are well structured, practices, clearly defined. Yeah, but there is no mention of them in Kitab and Sunnah. Yeah, so what is this Muraqabah? Where it is come from? Yeah, so these particular practices, they consider that they are innovations. So here Imam Ghazali's work proved that true Sufism is the heart of Islam. It is the core of Islam. Yeah, he convinced the people that it is not against Islam. Only at the most, at the max, you can say about Sufism is it is permissible. Don't say it innovative, just say it is permissible. Yeah. And at the same time, Ghazali said to the Sufi peoples, don't say it that it is wajib. Don't say it that it is required. Because there is no mention of these practices in the Kitab Sunnah. Yeah, so don't say that it is obligatory to do. Only you can say is that it is permissible thing. So whoever wanted to do, whoever wanted to, to practice these things, he is allowed to do. Yeah.
Imam al-Ghazali showed that spirituality and Islamic law are not opposites, but complementary parts of Islam. If you found this lesson helpful, please like, subscribe, and share.